Hello everyone, Alec Elger the SideQuest Gamer here, and you've all seen this review coming. I specifically ordered a Steam card online just to play this game. Not out of excitement, but just to see if this game is worth the hype. And also to get this channel some views. Hey, at least I'm being honest about it. Is this game worth the universal praise the internet gives it, or is it just another overhyped game to be forgotten? Well, let's roll the footage and find out. Undertale, a unique RPG that advertised itself as the game where you don't have to kill anyone, and that very game took the world by storm a few months ago. It's not surprising because indie games are known for taking our world by storm by introducing a new idea or concept on a much smaller budget than most of the AAA games that don't do anything new with a tired format. I'm looking at you, FPS genre. In 2011, it was Minecraft. In 2014, it was Five Nights at Freddy's. While many people love these games, many others found it overrated, and I was afraid the same would happen with Undertale. I'm one of gaming's biggest skeptics when it comes to games people rant and rave over. I always wait until the hype dies down so I can appreciate the games for what it is and not the perfection the fans make it out to be. Seriously, people wouldn't shut up about this game. SideQuest Gamer, have you played Undertale? Oh my god, you have to play Undertale. It's like the best game ever, better than Ocarina of Time. Everywhere you go on the internet, you'll see Undertale fan art or people using Undertale screenshots of characters as their profile pictures. The reviewers on YouTube are eating this game up, with a few calling it either their new favorite game of all time or one of their favorite games of all time. One thing you can count on is Undertale making it on the top 10 games of 2015 lists on YouTube. And oh boy, the fanbase. Never have I come across a fanbase so dedicated to not spoiling the endings. They just tell you to play the game. You see, why can't more fanbases be like that? I'm looking at you, Star Wars fanbase. Thanks for spoiling the ending for Star Wars The Force Awakens, because you know, I kinda wanted to see that in theaters. I do think that the fanbase's only biggest flaw is backseat gaming whenever a YouTuber streams or does a let's play of this game, but this game did to video games what Frozen did to movies. People referenced the songs, people were curious about it at first and now really enjoy it and make it out to be an instant classic. It was also a fresh new take on their respective genres that previously went stale. As Frozen reinvented the Disney princess movie, Undertale reinvented the 2D RPG in some way. Even though this may be my channel's undoing, I do have a few reservations against this game, and while many would not agree with them, I do have a responsibility to tell others my true perspective, just in case they want to know whether their $10 are a good investment or not. It may cost me a bunch of dislikes and negative reactions, maybe even lose a few subscribers, but it is a risk I'm more than willing to take, and since 90% of the comments on my channel are reasonable, I can take whatever the 10% throw at me. So anyways, Undertale. It was developed by Toby Fox, who had this game crowdfunded on Kickstarter with a goal of just $5,000. However, to say that the Kickstarter exceeded expectations is a major understatement, as it amassed over $50,000 on Kickstarter, funded by over 2,000 people. Now, Toby Fox did mostly everything by himself. The programming, music, some of the art, almost everything in the game, and he did this all in under 3 years, with the help from a few others, but he did most of the work by himself. That is impressive, especially since so much thought went into every detail of the game. He did get some assistance with some of the character designs, but he mostly done everything by himself in the development process. Let's first talk about the combat system. While most turn-based RPGs have turn-based battles where an enemy attacks you and then you attack it back, this combat system gives you so many options. One is the path of violence that will drastically affect the ending in a negative way, where you attack by timing the fast-moving white bar, and the closer it is to the center, the more damage it deals to the enemy. Like standard RPG fare, you can also equip weapons that deal more damage, like a toy sword for example, but there's also the pacifist route you can choose when you select Act and open up actions where you can intimidate the enemy, complement the enemy. It really depends on the enemy you fight, as different resolution actions open up for different enemies. I suggest using the check option to learn about the enemy's personality and mood, as that is the key to figuring out how to resolve the battle peacefully with the enemy. Once the enemy's problem is resolved, its name will turn yellow and you can end the battle by choosing to spare it. When you go the violent genocide route, you will level up and become stronger, but attempting the genocide route where you kill everyone is very unsettling, especially when you kill a major character who even shows you kindness until the end. And when you kill all the enemies in the area, it's just so empty, and there's even music that adds to the atmosphere of the emptiness. All the villages are abandoned, everyone is just gone. However, the pacifist route will give you money, but you will never level up. You'll always stay at 20 HP and often forcing you to buy armor to increase your defense, so you lose less HP when taking damage. When the enemy does initiate an attack, it involves moving your soul, represented by the heart, and you'll have to avoid anything white. Although occasionally there are enemies like Vegetoids that sometimes throw green objects and get you to resolve with the enemy. This is a simple yet surprisingly intuitive combat system, as each enemy can be very creative with the objects they throw at your soul, like Papyrus or the battle with a possessed dummy for example. Papyrus turns your soul blue, adding gravity to it, and you can only jump over the approaching white bones, and you can only jump a certain height. The dummy boss has his minions throw energy at you, and since it's immune to physical attacks, you would use the minions' projectiles against the dummy. These situations were so well thought out that the combat system with random battles almost never feels tedious. And knowing that this is a standout feature of Undertale, it does not disappoint. However, I cannot say the same for its method of progression. And this is where the controversy might start in the comments section. Don't get me wrong, the pacifist and genocide routes was a fantastic way to encourage replayability, with the consequences of one playthrough even affecting the playthrough after that. For example, if you do a true genocide route and get that ending, the very final character, who is scarier than Gygas from Earthbound, by the way, will appear in further playthroughs and taunt you should you agree to the deal he makes with you, and he will even end a post-genocide pacifist route on a pretty unsettling note. And no matter how many times you reset the game, the actions of your genocide playthrough will still exist, and you'll actually have to go into the game's hidden files and delete a few things. So do yourself a favor and do the pacifist route first, otherwise you'll never see the true pacifist ending. But the thing that bothered me about Undertale's method of progression is that there isn't much indication on how to get the genocide ending. You have to meet very specific requirements, or else you'll just get the bad neutral ending. You don't encounter the final character, nothing. The requirement is that you kill every enemy in every area. The ruins, Snowdin, Hotland / the core, every area. But the problem is that when realizing this, the ruins was already blocked off, missing my chance to destroy the remaining ruins inhabitants. I thought all I had to do was just kill off the major characters and kill enemies that are in my way. I didn't know I had to kill every enemy. In fact, I thought that random encounters were infinite. Jeez, I sound like a genocidal maniac, don't I? It's just that I felt lied to. It would have been nice if Flowey in the beginning told me to kill every creature in every area, hinting at the importance of killing every enemy for the evil ending, but now I have to reset everything. I'm sorry, but that is not a method of progression I'm fond of. I mean, in the pacifist route, you can still get a really good ending even if you didn't resolve every creature's problems. You'll notice some enemies' names aren't yellow, meaning you didn't resolve everything, but I still got a really good ending. So why couldn't the same apply for the evil ending, where I killed a few creatures and killed all the major characters? I thought all I had to do was that. I didn't know the specific requirements until I looked it up online. But that's the only flaw I can say this game has that qualifies as a questionable design choice. My other grievances are more subjective than anything. I do like the story. This game has you play as a gender-ambiguous child who fell into the ruins, and you meet Toriel, the goat mother character you see in fan art everywhere. Now, this is spoiler-free, but I will ambiguously mention plot devices here and there. Toriel in the beginning teaches you how to solve puzzles and be independent. She wants to adopt you, but you want to go home, and the only way out is beyond the ruins. When asking her about the exit to the ruins, she goes downstairs, you follow her, and she plans on destroying the exit so she can keep you and you wouldn't die. She mentions how previous children she's tried to adopt leaves the ruins and ended up dead. She then mentions a character named Asgore who wants any human who wanders into their world to be killed off for a reason revealed much later in the game that I won't spoil. This is where the game really begins, as you can choose to kill or spare Toriel, and while I did find revisiting the obvious puzzles tedious for multiple playthroughs, you know, the puzzles that made fun of hand-holding in other games, The departure from the ruins is such a touching scene, and she's not the only character in this game. You've probably heard of a certain skeleton duo named Sans and Papyrus, and boy are they funny. They make a lot of the bone-related puns that aren't really funny for their substance, but rather funny for their delivery. Sans is especially funny, except for the bad neutral playthrough where you took away the one thing that really mattered to him, and he even tells you to go to hell. With Sans being a really friendly character, you're really a terrible person if you angered him that much. I like their design as their names are obvious puns on text fonts, like Papyrus is based off the Papyrus font, and even has his dialogue in that font, while Sans' dialogue box is based off Comic Sans font. It's the little things like that that gives the game a lot of charm. There's so many characters to talk about, like Undyne, whom they introduce as a really intimidating knight who's out for your head and constantly hunting you down. She's constantly pursuing you in various sections of the game, and these moments had my heart racing. However, later in the game, you get to learn more about her, and she's actually a really interesting character when you get to know her. Well, at least for the pacifist route. But as for the scientist, Dr. Alphys, I found her to be a real hindrance to the fun I had, as she constantly texted you nonsense and calls you attempting to help you, except you already solved the puzzle she's trying to explain. It just gets really annoying, and I can't say I like her that much, especially if you engage in a side quest where you discover the experiments she ran in the laboratory basement. Not only did she annoy me, but she also has a questionable moral conscience. The robot Mettaton, I liked its personality, however, he was funny the first playthrough, but the second one I just didn't look forward to playing through those 5 annoying appearances. They weren't battles, but more like glorified long cutscenes. And as for Asgore himself, you'll be surprised at what kind of character he actually is when you reach to the end of the game. For a character who's out to kill humans, you would expect a tyrant-like character who has no tolerance for anything. Sure, everyone says he's nice, but only to the monsters. You don't expect him to be so kind to a human. The story is simply great and well written. I do like its constant use of poking fun at many RPG tropes and even video game tropes in general, like hand-holding in the beginning of the game. That used to annoy me until my friend King K mentioned how it was just an obvious shot at hand-holding sections in the intros of many video games. Sometimes it can go overboard with its fourth wall humor, like a puzzle with a super obvious solution or a character proposing a puzzle that sounds really complicated, but it turns out to be a really simple puzzle. Sometimes those moments get overused, but for the most part, it's pretty solid. I will admit that the Paper Mario series was better in the storytelling department, where they have that wacky sense of humor combined with some pretty sad moments, but Undertale, it did a fine enough job. As for the art style, some of the locales, especially Snowdin and the waterfall cave areas, simply look beautiful, and I do find myself getting immersed into them, and this is impressive for like a 16-bit styled game. I do think the sprite work for the main character is a little basic when compared to the more detailed sprite work for the monsters, but maybe that was an intentional design choice, to portray the human as just a simple empty slate while the monsters are the ones with personality. Come to think of it, that's a really interesting characterization choice, as in contrast to other RPGs like Final Fantasy, the characters were usually the ones with all the detail and personality, while the monsters were just plain empty slate monsters that you didn't care when you killed them. But the sprite work and art style are just well done, especially in atmosphere. Keep in mind everything is colored to look like what a lively subterranean civilization would look like in 16-bit. I've heard comparisons to Earthbound, and I will say the world structure and character designs do look like they took some inspiration from Earthbound, especially the combat system. It wouldn't surprise me because Toby Fox used to make Earthbound ROM hacks and was even a well-known forum member of Starman.net, an Earthbound fan site. The music is especially well done. I know everyone loves Megalovania, but I honestly wouldn't think Megalovania when thinking about the great Undertale soundtrack. My favorite soundtrack in the game has to be Another Medium, the theme you would hear in Hotland. It's just so fast-paced and catchy, I haven't heard anything like that in gaming. The soundtrack is simply phenomenal to say the least. I love the fast-paced Megalovania. I enjoy the winter-sounding Snowdin Town theme. The waterfall theme is very atmospheric. I could just talk about the soundtrack all day. But I have to ask the bigger question. Is Undertale really a masterpiece like everyone says it is? It really depends on your point of view. I personally found some of the joke puzzles and certain battles like the Metaton encounters to feel more like an experience and less like a game. Like after your first playthrough, the challenge is all over, then you know the solution to each battle and puzzle, you've read every piece of dialogue, you've heard every joke, the only new thing is the ending you're striving for. So I won't say this is one of my favorite games of all time, unfortunately. Don't get me wrong, I really like this game, but in order to be one of my favorites, I want a reason to keep playing through it with some level of challenge. I do plan on playing through this game to get the best and worst endings, but I don't expect a lot of challenge in doing so. For games like Super Mario Bros. 3, which I replay every year, the challenge in that game is still a challenge, even though I know how to bypass it. Like the many enemy projectiles on the airships, it's a fair challenge, but still a challenge nonetheless. Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger still have challenges in them, as combat requires heavy strategy, but so many variables can happen, keeping the turn-based battles with an element of unpredictability, like one of your characters being poisoned or blinded temporarily. Now you gotta use the other party members to fight off the monster until the poisoned character heals itself or removes its status ailment. That's the kind of challenge I want in a game of high replay value. And the block puzzles in the core did a fine job with that enough, as well as some of the boss battles, but there just wasn't enough of that challenge, at least for a pacifist playthrough, but the same cannot be said for the genocide playthrough. But the same can be said for the genocide playthrough to a degree, as it's not like Undyne will randomly alter variables when fighting her in that intense battle. It is much harder than the pacifist playthrough, don't get me wrong, but after you fight her, you probably know how to defeat her in further encounters. Maybe it's because this game is not a very long game. The pacifist run only took me around 6 hours, while the genocide route only took around 7 or 8 hours. I did get my money's worth, and I am very glad I played it, but I wouldn't consider it to be one of my favorite games of all time. But I do understand why the internet loves this game to death. Its story is well written, the characters are well developed, eccentric, and most importantly, interesting. The art style is very charming, especially with the sprites transitioning to black and white in combat mode. The music is so well composed that I can see why many people on Steam paid their hard-earned money for the soundtrack alone. It is an excellent game. In some degree, it is a masterpiece. I may not see it as such, as I can admire the hard work and dedication put into every detail, but the painting known as the Mona Lisa is also a masterpiece. Just because it is a masterpiece doesn't make it my favorite painting of all time. Same can be said for this game. I guess it's all in the eye of the beholder at the end of the day, so take my opinion with a grain of salt, but we can all agree on that Undertale is a well-made game, and with that being said, I would give it my score of a 95 out of 100. Is it my favorite indie game of all time? No, I actually prefer Dust and Elysian Tale, and even Cave Story. But let's stop comparing and just enjoy the game for what it is. I do recommend downloading it. It's available on Steam and many other PC distribution sites. Heck, you can even download it from the actual Undertale website. So that's Undertale. At this point, this video is probably buried under the many other Undertale reviews on the internet, with everybody praising it and glorifying it and all that. At least I can take comfort in the fact that my review is relatively spoiler-free, because that's pretty hard to do for this game in particular. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this review. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, remember to stay awesome.